All right, let's open the vault on this one. We're about to look at a file that was kept secret for almost 50 years. Inside is one of the wildest and honestly most frightening plans ever cooked up by a superpower. A plan for the moon that had nothing to do with planting a flag.
So picture it, 1958. The world is on edge, the Cold War is in full swing, and the space race was just getting started. Everyone's looking up at the stars, dreaming about astronauts and new frontiers. But behind the scenes, military planners were looking at our closest celestial neighbor with, well, a very different idea in mind.
Yeah, you heard that right. The original American plan for the moon wasn't to take one small step for man. It was to detonate a nuclear bomb on its surface. I know, it sounds like something a cartoon supervillain would come up with, but I promise you, this was absolutely a real plan.
And this wasn't for science. Not at all. This was about sending a message. The whole point was to create a mushroom cloud so massive, so bright, that it would be visible from Earth without a telescope. A terrifying light show aimed squarely at the Kremlin.
And here's where the story gets even more surreal. Guess who they brought in to help figure this all out? A young, brilliant astronomer named Carl Sagan. Yep, before he was telling us about billions and billions of stars, he was on a top-secret team tasked with figuring out how to nuke the moon.
The official title was something boring, like a study of lunar research flights, but internally, it had a much more ominous code name, Project A119. So let's pull back the curtain and declassify this thing.
It's the big question, isn't it? It just sounds completely insane. Why on earth would anyone seriously suggest detonating a nuke on the moon? Well, to get the answer, you really have to understand the sheer panic and desperation of that moment in history.
You have to remember, this whole idea wasn't born out of some scientific quest. It was forged in the fire of the Cold War, a high-stakes gambit in the race for global supremacy.
Just look at 1957. The Soviets launch Sputnik, and it sends a shockwave across the world. America tries to respond with its own satellite, and the rocket explodes on the launch pad on national television. It was a disaster. America wasn't just losing the space race, it was being publicly humiliated. Washington needed a big, dramatic statement, and they needed it fast. So the thinking went, if we can't beat them in a race of scientific firsts, maybe we can just scare them. Project A119 was meant to be the ultimate show of force, a celestial flex to prove American power, designed to make Moscow nervous and let our allies know who was really in charge.
So how do you even begin to plan something this crazy? Well, you get a team of some of the brightest people you can find, including a future science icon, to work out the very grim details.
Carl Sagan's job was chillingly specific. He had to figure out how a nuclear dust cloud would behave in the moon's weak gravity. The big question was, would the mushroom cloud be big enough, and would it catch the sun's light just right so that people on Earth could see it? His math was designed to make sure the whole world, especially the Soviets, got the message loud and clear.
Thankfully, as this idea got closer to reality, some people started to think about the enormous risks. The very same smart people who designed the plan also started pointing out its pretty obvious and pretty catastrophic flaws.
Turns out, there were two huge show-stopping problems. First, launch failure. Let's be honest, American rockets at the time were unreliable. There was a very real chance one could blow up on the way up, dropping an armed nuclear bomb somewhere over the United States. Not good. Second, fallout. The explosion would have permanently contaminated the moon with radiation, making it useless for any future science or exploration. The risks were just way too high.
So once they realized how dangerous it was, the project wasn't just canceled, it was buried. The files were locked away, and everyone who knew about it was sworn to absolute secrecy. So in 1959, the plan was officially scrapped, and the whole incredible story just vanished. It stayed a secret, classified and hidden from the public for more than 40 years. It's a pretty stark reminder of how close we came to a very different kind of space race.
You know, the Apollo missions gave us these iconic images of peace and human achievement. But just a decade before that, the plan was to literally scar the face of the moon with a weapon of war. It really makes you think, right? How would we see our place in the universe today if humanity's first mark on another world wasn't a footprint, but a mushroom cloud?